Things to bear in mind if you are thinking of making an R&D claim in 2023. Well, my first piece of advice, and this is probably the most important one and the one that will be most appreciated, is if you have the opportunity to make an R&D claim before August this year, do it. Why am I encouraging you to do it before then? Because the amount of information that you'll have to provide will be minimal compared to after. Because for all claim submissions from the 1st of August 2023, HMRC are now wanting to see evidence. You know, if you're making a claim right now and you look at your projects and then you look at your costs and you sort of bulk all your costs together in one nice tidy pile and you put it next to your technical report, well, that's lovely, but that won't be allowed after August. From that moment, HMRC will be wanting you to break down every single cost that goes alongside every single project. So that means if your technical director spent their time throughout the year on 6 different projects, well, no longer will you be allowed to say he spent 95% of his time on R&D. You will now have to break down his time for 18% on project A, 14% on project B, the list goes on. And remember, if a project only lasted, for example, 3 months, then you will not be permitted to put any more than 25% of that person's time. Same as when it comes for a 6-month project, don't put any more than 50% of someone's time. Now, another aspect of this evidence that Revenue and Customs are looking for is the breakdown of the development within your R&D projects. Because I have mentioned in another video that research and development cannot be chance. HMRC are now fully expecting you to be keeping logs and diaries of your R&D activities. Because even though it's unlikely that you would face an inquiry if you've done your job right and worked with the specialist correctly, it doesn't mean that your claim can't be pulled at random. And so it's always a good idea for you just to get into best practice with record keeping. Something else to be aware of is start and end dates. At the moment, you are allowed to say that you have a project that is ongoing and you don't know the end date. After the 1st of August, that won't be the case. You will have to have an end date in sight, even if it's just a best guesstimate. Now, an interesting thing you'll want to know is with this August change comes more autonomy for the claimer. What do I mean by that? Well, ultimately now, when the specialist has written up the technical report and broken down the costs, they now have to send that to the claimant company for overall sign-off. That means someone at your company has to check the report, make sure there's no anomalies, make sure you agree with what the R&D specialist has written, and finally, and more importantly, you have to sign it off. Now, that is another great reason to work with a specialist, because essentially what you're doing is you are explaining your projects from an industry perspective, and your R&D provider is listening to that story and picking up the R&D elements, and together you are creating a robust report. And with you having to sign it off, you get a lot more control. Something else to bear in mind, and this is something that comes up quite often when I speak to companies, there's a big misconception out there that the words bespoke and unique or first of its kind automatically means that you can claim R&D. And unfortunately, it doesn't. Why? Because there's no guarantee that you've actually advanced your industry, nor is there any guarantees that you've faced technological uncertainty along the way. Just think of it like this. HMRC don't really care about the first man that landed on the moon, alright? Any man has the capability to land on the moon. What they care about is the rocket ship that brought him there. The technology. So always bear that in mind when you're thinking of your own projects. Ask yourself, is the technology that I'm using or the science that I'm using readily available off the shelf, easily accessible to all my competitors? If the answer is yes and yes alone, as in you're not adapting it or improving it in any way, then chances are you will not be eligible for an R&D claim. So again, this is where I urge you to work with specialists, watch webinars, follow them on social media, and really get to grips with this topic.